Braindead. Peter Jackson. Now everyone knows Peter Jackson from the Lord of the Rings movies, or maybe his King Kong movie, or the Hobbit movies even, which were meant to mix critical reception. But many people don't know that Peter Jackson got his start in horror. He was a big horror movie guy. Very rude and crass and gross director. So he made movies like Bad Taste, Meet the Feebles, and this movie, Braindead. In my opinion, the way I look at it, he's a very similar director to Sam Raimi. They both got their start making some gross horror comedies, and then they were given each a big franchise trilogy to direct. Sam Raimi with the Spider-Man trilogy, Peter Jackson with the Lord of the Rings trilogy. And it just goes to show, like, I feel like there's a negative stigma around, like, oh, he makes horror comedies, oh, it's basically just blood and guts flying everywhere. There is an element of craftsmanship that goes to that, and especially while working with a small and tight budget. Both Sam Raimi and Peter Jackson were able to prove that they are very capable directors, even though they were making some schlock, quote-unquote schlock. I much preferred Peter Jackson's early career, not gonna lie, and that's not a knock on Lord of the Rings. It's just not the kind of movie I would go for. I'm not much of a big fantasy guy. So, in my opinion, I think Braindead is Peter Jackson's best movie. That's a controversial opinion right there, but needless to say, I love this movie. It's a very fun movie to watch. This is the perfect movie to crack open beers and watch on Halloween and just have a fun time. I think this movie has the world record for the most amount of fake blood used in a movie, which is pretty astounding considering that Kill Bill Volume 1 is a movie. But I think this movie has more fake blood than Kill Bill Volume 1. So you get the picture of what kind of movie this is. So movie follows this character. I forget his name. I'm not really good with names. But he lives with his mom, and his mom is a bit of a ball and chain. And she constantly feels the need to have her son around her until the son meets a girl and falls in love with the girl, and the mother starts getting jealous. He's spending more time with this new girl, more than his mother. And in the midst of all this, the mother gets infected when she gets bitten by a rat in the zoo and becomes a zombie. And everyone in the town starts to get infected while this character is trying to break out of his mother's spell. Very over-the-top movie. The characters are very caricature-y. The main love interest, for example, is so ditzy and falls in love with this guy so quickly. She basically just falls in love with him because she's doing tarot cards with her mother, and she says she's destined to fall in love with this guy, and as soon as that happens, she does. The mother is so over-the-top, evil stepmom kind of thing. The movie is not very subtle is what I'm getting at, and nor is it trying to be subtle. So right off the bat, the beginning of the movie, you're introduced to the whole plot of the movie. The movie opens on Skull Island. As you guys might know, Peter Jackson's a big King Kong fan, and that's his subtle wink at King Kong, which he'll later direct a King Kong movie in 2005. But yeah, we're introduced to this infected rat, and shit goes down. That rat is really fun to watch. It's like a cheesy stop-motion rat, which you don't see stop-motion special effects made in live-action film anymore. I think people just don't buy it anymore, and I can understand why it plays at a different frame rate than the rest of the movie, so people just get drawn out of it. But there is something kind of fun to watch about stop-motion effects in a live-action film.
There, for you!
This movie prides itself on its gore, on its disgusting scenes. One scene that irks me particularly is the mom is eating soup, and as she's eating soup, her ear falls in the soup, and then she eats her ear. For some reason, that's the scene that... Ugh. I'd say about halfway through the movie, that's when shit really starts getting real. That's when the pace starts picking up. So you might watch this movie at first and be like, I don't know what this is going for. It just feels a little campy. Stick with the movie. Just make it to the 45-minute mark. At that specific point, that's when stuff starts picking up and it just feels like an R-rated Looney Tunes cartoon. One scene that's definitely over the top is... there's a priest, and the priest knows kung fu, and one day in the cemetery there's zombies that start appearing, and the priest just shows up with his heavy New Zealand accent, and he says, "Oi, kick ass for the Lord!" It was a horrible accent. I'll play the clip.
I kick ass for the Lord.
The climax of this movie is so outrageous and so over the top. When this movie came out in New Zealand, they didn't even give it the highest rating. So when it was out in America, they gave it an R rating. Same thing basically all around the world. But in New Zealand, they actually bumped it down to like a 16 plus. And that's because they just felt that this movie was so over the top that it didn't even warrant, like it wasn't really disturbing. And I can understand that. And I think Peter Jackson was well aware of that while making the movie. There's even a scene where the uncle is grinding up zombies in like some kind of like masher. And you can see that the brand on the device is written Acme on it, which is the brand that's always in Looney Tune cartoons. So the whole movie is done out of good fun, and it just feels like a very fun movie. A lot of creative kills. They smash a zombie's head on a light bulb, and for the rest of the climax, that zombie's head is lighting up. And of course, there's the lawnmower, which everyone remembers from this movie. The hero comes out with a lawnmower and just starts lawn mowing zombies. Such a fun movie. I think this is the funnest movie I'll be reviewing in this zombie marathon. I think Day of the Dead is the best zombie movie for the themes it tackles, but as far as just a fun time, I think this is as good as it gets. I wouldn't quite put it on the level of an Evil Dead 2. Evil Dead 2 to me is a perfect film. It's good, campy, horror fun. This is just slightly below that, and I was trying to put my finger on why I think this movie is a little less good than Evil Dead. And I feel like this movie is lacking a Bruce Campbell or just like a really charismatic lead. They intentionally make this character a dweeb, which is fine. Bruce Campbell was a dweeb in the Evil Dead movies and even in Army of Darkness. But he was still very charismatic, very charming, and he had great one-liners like groovy. Yeah, stuff like that. Hail to the king, baby. I wish this character had more to do, but instead he just like grins and nervous laughter throughout the whole movie. That's my main criticism I have with the movie. I wish there was a better lead. I do want to see Peter Jackson return to the horror genre. I don't know if I don't think he directed Mortal Engines. I think he just produced that, but I think he was heavily involved in the producing of it. But he now is associated with these big theatrical epic movies. I want to see him kind of stray away from that and make another horror movie, similar to how Sam Raimi did Drag Me to Hell halfway through the Spider-Man trilogy. I'd like to see Peter Jackson return to horror comedy. I think that could be an interesting move on his part. I don't know if he's interested. At this point, if a studio's giving you $200 million to make whatever you want, like, you just go with that. You're not going to decline it and be like, nah, I want to make a $1 million horror movie. But it would be an interesting thing to see. That's all I have to say with the movie. I think this is a fun movie. One more thing, depending on where you live, this movie might be called Dead Alive or Braindead. So when it was released in New Zealand, it was called Dead Alive. When they released it in America, there was already a movie that was pretty recent called Dead Alive with, I think, Dustin Hoffman or some shit like that. So they had to change the title to Braindead. I don't know which title I prefer, to be honest. I think Braindead is more fitting because the movie kind of makes you feel brain dead. It kind of lowers your IQ, but in a good way. So yeah, I think this is Peter Jackson's best movie. I think it's better than any of the Lord of the Rings movies. I think it's better than King Kong. To be honest, I'm not that big in Meet the Feebles. I think that's just a one-note joke played out for a whole movie. And I think this movie is better than Bad Taste. But I do enjoy Bad Taste a lot. So yeah, I think this is Peter Jackson's best movie. If you're a fan of Lord of the Rings, just watch this out of curiosity. You're like, what the fuck? How did Peter Jackson direct this movie? Go ahead and watch it. But other than that, glowing recommendation from my part. I'm giving this one a 9 out of 10. Definitely a higher echelon of zombie movies I've reviewed so far. So check it out.
Piece of horror.
Your mother ate my dog!
Dead alive.
Party's over.